This episode is sponsored by Dr. Janine Jeannot. Dr. Janine Jeannot is the author of The Disintegrating Student, Super Smart and Falling Apart, a book about why we're trying harder than ever as parents, but our kids are doing worse than ever. She discusses the pressures our students are under and how we as parents can help alleviate that stress and become more connected with our children. She's a student and parent coach, so she knows a lot on the subject as she sees it every day. She offers one-on-one parent and education coaching for you or your child and has a free newsletter that is full of insight regarding the latest in parenting struggles. To buy her book, book her coaching sessions, or join her newsletter, go to www.janinejannot.com. That's JANNINEJANNOT.com. And if you haven't already listened to either of our two podcasts together, I suggest you go do it because they're some of the most popular ones because everything she says is awesome. Go to her website and check her out. Okay, today's topic is public school options during COVID-19. Many parents don't know that there are more options available to them than the ones offered by their districted school. I'm talking with Stephen Quinn from Georgia Can. Georgia Can is a local nonprofit that seeks to identify and advance common sense policies that put the needs of students first. They advocate for student success through the entire public education system. They've also been offering a wealth of useful information regarding public options for families during the pandemic. Today, Stephen lays out beautifully what the virtual, charter, and other public options and programs are for families, and especially families in need. Share this with anyone you know that's in public schools.
Go, Mommy! Go! The best mom ever. You are the best mom ever.
This is the Go Get Mom podcast.
I think a lot of families are like figuring it out right now. And like, you're right. I sometimes like I don't even know all of the answers to the questions because there's so much of like information out there that a parent can totally get lost. And so like it's definitely I feel that right now.
Yeah. So are you a parent?
I am not a parent, but I've been doing this work with parents for about 7 years now. And so every year is a different year when we go back to school, right? This year is definitely different than last year, but I think it's been interesting. Like there are more options every year for families, whether it's public, private, or even like a traditional charter school or a state charter. And so families are just trying to figure it all out. And so every year I uncover, I feel like a new option out there or a new question from a parent that I have never been asked before. And so I may not be able to answer it because you never know.
Well, but thanks for even just trying to be someone who's compiling that information because it doesn't feel readily available.
Yeah, you're correct. I feel like a lot of this information is put out there and it's just like parents have to like search for it. It's like a treasure hunt when it comes to options like this. And sometimes I think there's just probably a lot of people asking those same questions that we're trying to ask. And sometimes the districts or the school or even the school itself doesn't have the ability to answer everyone's question. And so I think sometimes being able to be that middleman of like, hey, this is what we're hearing and what we're looking for, and being able to find some of those things out there is super helpful for families.
Yeah, because I mean, particularly for families who maybe have like a single parent household who's working two jobs, like how do they have time to navigate educational options for their kids when it's not, super clearly spelled out for them what those options are?
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting you say that because I think like a lot of times I've hear from parents that are just starting the process, like their kid is going into kindergarten. And so they're looking at all the options and they're saying, okay, well, this is what we want. This is what we need. And then they create those, like I've heard parents create spreadsheets of schools and it's kind of interesting to hear that dialogue. But then I have a lot of parents that come to me starting at like second, third, or fourth grade, or even into middle school looking for something different because they're just like, it wasn't working over the past couple years. We kind of waited out and then we get to that point and we're like, we need something different, or my son or daughter needs something that this school isn't providing me. And so like, what options do I have? And I think that's been another layer of all this too. I think a lot of it's either like right when they start or kind of in the middle of their education experience.
Yeah, once they realize things aren't working. And I imagine, I mean, all this is the same but magnified right now, right? Like everything about what resources you provide and support you provide to families, it's the same old story, I assume, to you, except perhaps amplified.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's magnitude, like it's gotten larger, right? So in some capacity, like some families in some districts, I, I would have never they would have never looked for those options, right? But now they are. And
Mhm.
I think for other places in the state, it's there's always a need and there's always a lot more options. So I think that's kind of been the other end of this is like equitability on like school choices is that it's so ranging in terms of like what options available in Atlanta are very different than they are in South Georgia or they're in North Georgia because just what landscape of schools are available. But Georgia does have a lot of those options, and then there are stuff that is statewide. So like some of the virtual schools, no matter where you live in the state, you can attend those schools, which is kind of option, which is a great option for families, especially if they're looking for something like long term in terms of like I want to be in a virtual school for a full year. Then those are the options that I think families should be looking into because they're more of an opportunity for them to be engaged in that virtual learning if that was working for their child in the spring, for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, I want to kind of maybe go into those options a little bit of detail if you are comfortable sharing, because you know making a decision for the whole school year when next month is not certain, it can be overwhelming. But I do think a lot of families who can possibly provide virtual, at least a situation where their child can be at home learning virtually, might just be like, you know what, I'm tired of wondering if 1 minute they're going to be in school, if they're going to be in for 2 weeks, or if they're going to be in for 2 months, or the rest of the year. And so, knowing that there are these virtual options, do you mind kind of like telling me what those are and why you would choose one over the other?
Yeah, so the virtual options that exist out there currently, one of those is like a Georgia Cyber Academy or a Georgia Connections Academy, and those are like state charter schools that are created, and they basically are virtually ran schools that run all year long. They actually exist for families, I think, beyond Metro Atlanta, but they have an opportunity for kids to learn at home, and so. They've been doing this way before the pandemic started. I think it was some of them were launched as far back as 2010. I think I might not be
Okay.
correct on that one, but they're an opportunity for families I think that are in need, and so they do provide sometimes loaner services. So meaning like they have like computers and things, so that if a family needs those resources, they'll work with them to get those devices in their hands,
Oh,
and so they're helpful in that sense. And so I think they exist here. There's also like a Georgia Virtual School, which offers courses for families, and that's more of a state-based school. Those exist already, and for families to really navigate those, I encourage one. I think it goes back to the child, right? Like if you're looking for that option, you're a parent and you know this. Like you know your kid the most and the best, I would say.
yeah.
And I think finding that option for them is like, is this going to work? And if your kid really thrives during virtual learning, that might be a good option for your child going forward. And it might be something as a parent you should definitely be looking into. I think if they didn't thrive as well in the virtual learning plan effort, then there might be a conversation that you might have to have about some in-person learning. But I think you know that as a parent, and I think that's something that I will never say to a parent like you need to be full virtual or you need to be full in person. I think it's all about what that parent makes that decision, and that they know their child the best, and having that opportunity to really make that choice is something that families really want right now, and I think they're trying to navigate it. But those are the three kind of virtual schools, and then there are state charters. So that some of them do have statewide uh, attendance zones. So no matter where you live in the state, you can attend that school. One great site that I would check out if you're looking into charter options is the Georgia Charter Schools Association. They actually have a great map where you can just type in your address and it'll pop up all of the schools that are around you in a certain mile radius, and then they can direct you to those schools via that site. And that's a great resource for families. Some of them do have opening spaces as up to the first day. There are wait lists though for some of these schools, so if you are applying, you may get waitlisted, but then there is a rotating conversation of like some people don't attend the first day, or they may choose a
Mm.
different option. So you might be able to get access into those schools before even the start of school, or even in the first couple of weeks for sure.
How do those charters usually admit? Like, is it a lottery system, or is it like you have to test in, or how do they work as far as getting into these charters?
Yeah, so charter schools are public schools, so they have just a lottery system. They just have a certain number of seats they can accept. And so a parent just fills out a probably 2 or 3 question lottery. Like basically you're putting your name into like it's like that bingo drawing, right? Where you kind of
Mhm.
like you put your name into a big pot, and then you from there those schools will have a lottery in which the names will be drawn. And then if you do not make that first lottery, you'll be put into a wait list. Some of these sites have like what is called Lottery Ease, which is an easy way to apply for schools, and you can see all the schools that you can apply for, and then you just click those schools, and then it'll be a part of that process. I know for the Georgia Cyber and Georgia Connections, they do have lottery systems because they are state charter schools. So, but they are relatively easy to apply for. They don't ask for payment or anything. So, a charter school is a free public school, and so just be prepared for that. Some people get confused on that stuff, but 100% they're out there and they're available to families.
Okay. And then, so back to these sort of virtual state school programs. If your if your district is going all virtual, because a lot of them are,
Yeah.
just for out, for the get go, going to be virtual. What would be the benefit to doing something like Georgia Cyber Academy versus the virtual option that your county is giving you? Why are those different? Why did they not just say, okay, guys, we're going to do virtual, like this Georgia Cyber Academy? Why do they kind of have these? Everybody sort of seems to have Apex or Canvas, like all these different programs for virtual based on the district.
Yeah, yeah. I don't I think if you're looking for something long term and you want something more like beyond just the first few weeks of school, because I think some of these school districts have announced their plan to be virtual for like the first 9 weeks. I know Gwinnett and others have announced that they have like a phase in plan, so that they're kind of announcing in the first few weeks that they'll transition to in virtual learning. Then that's kind of that difference. I think with Georgia Cyber and Georgia Connections, they're fully virtual. They will never go in person. So if you are a little concerned and you want to make sure that you have that option, and you want to be fully virtual, that's a great way to opt in. Some of the districts actually do have virtual learning academies, which they do virtual learning all throughout the year as well. I think APS is one of those. I think that other districts like even like Forsyth County has a virtual learning option that's a full year long program. So there are things that exist out there in their own districts. I think it's just being based on like what that works for your family. I don't think there's any like pros and cons of picking each one, right? I think it's
Mhm.
just I think for families that are looking for something more long term, I would go into the state charter option just to say that. But for families that are just kind of want to get back to the traditional learning, I would just stay in your own district. That would be kind of the only thing there.
Mhm.
For families, I think it's kind of making that decision on their own is really what's easy there. There's no like ifs, ands, or buts on any of them. Like no one's better than the other one. It's all based on like what the need is right now for families, I think.
Gotcha. Okay. And how is it? If you do these virtual, like you said, the Georgia Cyber Academy, I realize you're committing for the school year, but transferring back into in person school, is that complicated to do between, like if you're withdrawn? So, do you basically, to do like Georgia's Cyber Academy and Connections Academy, are you withdrawing your child as a homeschooler and then enrolling them in those, I
So
guess?
yeah, it's like you would draw from the traditional school, and then you would just would basically apply and be accepted into that school, like you would normally do if you're moving district to district, right?
Oh, okay,
Type
okay.
thing. It's nothing like it's not like a supplement program through the district. So you just have to basically do the whole application process like you would normally do if you're like in registering or enrolling your child into the system. And so it's an easy transition.
Okay.
And I think I've heard families that started in a traditional school and then they moved to a virtual option. This is before the pandemic happened, and it was relatively easy for them. They said it was happened within a couple days, and so
Oh, okay.
so it's not too difficult. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and it's good to know too that these programs have kind of been around the block. Like you said, they've been doing this since roughly 2010.
yeah.
So they at least have these systems down. So if it does seem like, you're worried either, because I know some parents are not necessarily loving the sort of temporary virtual programs that are being set up in their districts. So this is another option that maybe if they know, hey, I'd rather just commit to virtual and know what the heck is going to happen rather than play it by ear every week, um, so it seems like a really good option, and I love the clarification that it doesn't cost anything. There's not a tuition. Um, and also the charters, if there are some charters with spaces, so would the charters follow whatever the rules are in their district? So like APS is gone, at least starting virtual. Um, if the charter school is located in that district, does that mean that it's also going to have the same mandates, or could it be possibly starting in person, or do you know?
So I know for like it depends on the district. So whatever the district is doing, I think most likely the charter is probably doing that same structure. So for Atlanta public schools, I know most of all the district schools are they are doing a virtual learning. So the charters are doing a virtual as well.
Hmm.
They may start different dates, so they may not be August 24th. I think a few of them actually started this week, and then there's a couple starting next week and the following week. And so there is that kind of divide there. But uh, traditionally, like if you are a local charter, you probably will be doing what the district is doing, similar to that. If you are a state charter, there's a little difference there. There is no,
Mm.
since they are their own kind of like school system in per se, they make their decisions on that. So we do have a few state charters that are doing in-person learning and also virtual learning. One of those I think is in College Park. Resurgence Hall is one of those examples. There's a couple others that have made that decision because they're outside of the Metro Atlanta area as well. And so I think that's a little different there, but I think beyond that, charters tend to be, if you're a local charter approved by the district, you most likely will be following the same structure that the local district would be following.
Gotcha. You can see how we need someone like you, because there's state charters, there's local charters, there's online academies, there's the virtual learning that your district is doing, and then there's just like regular public school. I mean, this is kind of complicated, right?
Oh, it is totally complicated, and I think that's why, like, I think parents get so like confused. And it's funny, we host appointments and stuff for families about just like talking through options, and people are like, "Hey, what is this option?" And a lot of it is just me like like saying like, "Hey, here's what's this out here." But to the point that we've done this in the past, like a lot of parents just don't know they have school options, and they
Right.
think that the traditional school is the only thing that they have. We partnered in the past to host a charter school expo uh, in this past year, or this year as well as the past year, and over time we've had almost 500 to 600 parents come through an expo to look and find more options for their kids. And
Nice.
it's kind of interesting. Like you don't realize like how many times parents just don't know that they have school choice, and they only think it happens in the district, right? And it might be something that some families are in need of, and I know right now more than ever they're looking for something, and so navigating that is definitely it's definitely it's a tough battle because you're like, what do I do? And then I think also just knowing what options you have, I think is something really powerful for sure.
Yeah, it's important. It's important that we know we have options for our children. That's kind of a big deal. And then, so another thing that brought to mind was, is it true that you can maybe send your child to whatever school in your district that you want if they have availability, is that across the state thing? Is that district by district, or or is that not even true?
So there's a bill that was passed a few years ago in the state legislature. It's called House Bill 251. Some parents on this podcast will probably remember this bill. There's a school choice program that offers by district. And so if the district has an open space, so like let's say if the district has a number of schools that have a number of open seats, they can create a lottery system and allow for that transfer to happen. Some of these district schools do this like in March or in February. I think DeKalb County does theirs around January. And there's a whole you have to fill out an application, and then you have to select what schools you would like to attend. And then you're put into a lottery system like a traditional charter would be, and then you're given that go if you are approved for that option. But it's only if they have selected open spaces for those schools. So you just can't say, I want to go to Lakeside High School, but I live in Lithonia High School District. You just can't do that. But I think if you apply through the school choice programs that exist through the district, and you're approved, then you can attend Lakeside High School. But I think you have to follow that, and each district has a certain kind of guideline. I think Googling is probably the best bet. So if you're
Yeah.
looking for like that program, there's usually a school choice office or a school choice option office in your district. And they pretty much clearly lay out the expectations and the rules on their websites. And if you can't find anything, it's always good just to call your local board of education, or even just your school board as well, and they can get you directed in the right directions for sure.
That's perfect. Thank you. I'm glad
Yeah,
it wasn't just something I had made up. I vaguely remember something about that,
it
but then,
exists.
sometimes there's these myths of things you can and can't do. I also wanted to talk to you about some other free programs. I know that you had mentioned like the school lunch stipend, and I may be using the wrong term for that, but um, for families that were receiving free lunches, what was that about? I know that you posted about that. How does that work?
Yeah, so the state of Georgia, so when coronavirus hit back in March, there was the CARES Act that was passed through the federal government. And so in that that act, or in that underneath that whole kind of care package, there was opportunity for families that currently receive free or reduced lunch, or attend a school that is completely free or reduced lunch, to receive a little bit of EBT or pandemic EBT because their school's closed.
Mhm.
And so this is called Pandemic EBT. It's a program that's available to families that qualify. And to qualify, you have to either receive SNAP benefits, or attend a school, or currently receive that receives free or reduced lunch, or your student receives free or reduced lunch. And so for families that currently receive SNAP benefits, they don't need to apply for this program. It's been automatically uploaded to their SNAP benefit card already. But if you do not receive SNAP benefits, you'll be required to apply for this program. And so it's underneath the Division of Family and Child Services, which is known as DFACS here in the state of Georgia.
Mhm.
They actually have an application site. You log on, you acknowledge that your child receives free or reduced lunch, and they attend a school that receives free or reduced lunch. And then you also need to have their Georgia student ID number, which is their testing ID number, which you can find on a report card or through the online portal. Some people call this like Infinite Campus, or something that's happening in the district. I don't know. Each district has a different name for it. Or if you just can't find that number, you can also just call the school, and they'll provide it to you pretty quickly. And you'll fill out the information of that application, and once approved, you'll receive a EBT card in the mail. I think it takes about 3 to 4 weeks, and that amount is $256 per child. And so you can use that to pay for EBT benefits, or use it for EBT approved purchases at local grocery stores for kids. So if you have multiple children in your home and they all attend a free and reduced lunch school, or they currently qualify for that, that's a great number of funds that can be used to help offset some of the costs that you might have had during the pandemic, or just over the next couple of weeks for snacks or things that they need for meals that might be in for the family for sure right now, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. Is it a one-time fee, or is it something that they'll receive like however many per semester, or how frequently?
It's going to be a one-time payment for right now.
Mhm.
So as you know, the federal government is changing every day, and so there is like new care packages. So we don't know if this will be multiple, but we know that it'll be a one-time payment currently.
Okay.
And I will tell you that it goes a long way in some capacity. I know that the DFACS website has a ton of answers to the questions that some parents have been asking, and so I think that's a great resource there, as well as if you have like direct questions too. Like I encourage families to contact the customer service line at DFACS as well, because they give a lot of like ins and outs on questions. I know some parents have reached out to us and others about like, hey, how do I navigate this? Definitely call them first, because they're going to be the easiest ones to help you apply and also get through the process too. Yeah.
Perfect. Are there any other programs that families maybe right now could utilize more than ever that you would want to be sure and share?
Yeah, so there some districts are doing currently doing summer like drop-offs or food pickups lines. So I know Atlanta Public Schools is doing this. I think Cobb County has done some of it, similar with DeKalb County. Definitely check out your local school website. They've partnered with food banks or the partners that have come in and release those resources to families and helping them kind of navigate, especially in a tough time like this right now. There is also the food bank. I think the Georgia Food Bank Association has a great website to share all the food banks in the state of Georgia that are completely free for families. And then I think there are a couple other like smaller programs that either like state legislators or community organizations are definitely doing. Facebook is probably the best way to find those, just to like pick up and information. Just saw like yesterday there was one in South Cobb where they were dropping and picking up sharing diapers and Lysol and other things that families were in need of. And so there are a lot of programs out there. Just kind of keep an eye on it, and we try to keep share that information as we get it as well. But I think for families to kind of navigate, especially with school supplies right now, that's another one that's happening. To definitely kind of think through and definitely check out those pickup lines. And a lot of it is just drive through. You get a bag and then you're off for the day. So it might be a little bit of a line wait, but I think it's a great resource for families, especially those that are in need right now.
Yeah, definitely. And then how can we support Georgia Can? Like, how can we help elevate you and your message so that families can have access to this information more easily?
Yeah, yeah. So we are a nonprofit that takes on education policy. And so this has actually been interesting. We pivoted since the COVID-19 outbreak. So we've been really trying to build resources and support for families. And so I think get involved either through our website. You can also, we have a Facebook group, which we are building with parents right now, that are kind of able to share those kind of resources like the drive-throughs and back to school bashes and all that stuff, so parents can know it. We do have a listserv of an email that goes out each week. Over the summer, we did resources around summer learning. Right now, we've kind of changed to more back to school and preparing kids for back to school and navigate those conversations. We're doing a parent conversation on Tuesday of next week. I don't know when this podcast goes out, but
I'm going to put it out on Wednesday of next
okay,
week because I wanted it out ASAP.
cool.
Mhm.
We're actually gonna we'll have a recording of that podcast, but we're talking about learning pods, and also kind of navigating different learning styles in virtual learning. And then we're going to be doing a conversation with kids with special needs, and virtual learning the following week. So you can definitely check out those two events. They're up on our Facebook page, as well as just kind of all the other resources that we have out there for our work in our state.
That's perfect. We need you now more than ever because honestly, all the research and also just kind of common sense is showing that this pandemic is widening the gap.
Yeah.
And families who were struggling before are struggling significantly more.
Yeah, yeah. I think this thing or this pandemic, I has really like highlighted the inequities, and not just in education, but like I think in like all of the aspects of like what families were facing. I
Mm-hmm.
think we knew that it was happening, right? Or families were making it work for whatever it was happening. But when COVID-19 hit, I think it just showed and put a spotlight on those inequities. And I think now there is so much support out there for families. It's just getting it into the hands of families, which I think is a bigger piece of the puzzle. Is something that I think a lot of nonprofits or even just communities are figuring out. How do I make sure that the family in Clarkston, Georgia, or the family in Sylvester, Georgia, right, get the resources and the knowledge out there? And I think that's been a big struggle. I mean, social media only goes so far,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that is word of mouth. But I think it's kind of navigating this new norm and just pushing this information out there farther than it really can go is probably the best thing. I mean, we put together a whole kind of application process or conversation around pandemic EBT a few weeks ago, and like within hours, that thing had already had like 400 shares on our Facebook page.
Wow.
And so you don't realize like a lot of times families are definitely in need, and I think now more than ever, like if there are programs and resources out there, families are definitely going to share it and definitely get out that word for it for sure.
All of the useful links Stephen shared are in the show notes on the website. Go to thekidfactory.org/gogetmom to find them. You can also follow and support Georgia Can at gacan.org, georgiacan.org. Yay, you finished the whole episode! For more about Go Get Mom, you can visit us at thekidfactory.org/gogetmom or follow us on Instagram at gogetmom.podcast.